Episode 2 for the week of Sideline Sports Podcast. That's right, we've got 2 this week for you fans. I'm the host, Alex Naveja of Sideline Sports Podcast, where if you're not on the sideline, it's not Sideline Sports Podcast, the source of all your SoCal sports news. And with me today is Brandon Marcus, the HoopBall Clippers podcast host. Brandon, thank you so much for being on the show, and how you doing today?
Alex, great to be here, man. I'm doing all right. It's basketball playoff season, which is always great. The Clippers got a first round win, so I'm excited about that and looking forward to tonight when round 2 kicks off.
Absolutely. Clippers, we'll get to exactly how they did in that first round in that recap. Just wanted to say very quickly, guys, we are around the corner from 200 subscribers. So make sure to hit the subscribe button down below. Also hit the notification bell as well so you guys know when we are uploading episodes. And also give a thumbs up to the episode because we're only getting bigger and better guests just like Brandon Marcus. So let's get there. Let's get to the 200 mark, guys. But without further ado, let's get started. As first round, Clippers taking on the Mavericks. That ended up being the Clippers' way. As you guys could see, Clippers ended up winning the series 4-2. And I really have to say, this was a very interesting series, Brandon. This is a series that, in my opinion, I think it should have went to Game 7 if they had Porzingis. And just losing him, first of all, Game 1, getting that ejection, I still don't think that's fair for him to get ejected in that game. And for him to get injured, that's really unfortunate to lose a big-time player like that. And this is a series that should have gone down to the wire. What do you think?
It was interesting is a good word for it because there was the whole Doncic and Porzingis injury stuff. I mean, Luka sprains his ankle. You think, okay, he probably is going to be out for the series. He comes back and he just dominates. And then you had the KP ejection, like you said, in Game 1, and then the knee injury. But at the same time, the Clippers were without Pat Beverly for the entire series. And Beverly is a guy that would have made a big impact if he was able to play. And he would have pestered a guy like Luka for pretty much the entire game. And instead, you don't have Beverly. And that's why you end up with a guy like Reggie Jackson, who gets switched on to Luka when he hit that game-winning 3. That was obviously the huge shot that gave Dallas the win late in the series. So there were injuries on both sides for sure. Obviously, the Luka and KP injuries / suspensions were big, and Luka clearly was hindered by the ankle, but still was just a monster. It was one of those series where the Clippers were the better team. I still think they are the better team. That being said, Luka is so damn good that he can single-handedly win games himself, and you saw that during the series, and it's very possible that the Dallas series is actually going to be harder than this Denver series. And you can even look at it and say that Dallas is better than both Denver and Utah. We don't know how it's going to play out, obviously. I mean, Jokic is a monster. Murray was incredible. But that being said, I mean, Dallas is really good. Could have gone to Game 7? Sure. Would have gone to Game 7 if KP was healthy? I don't know, because Doc was making adjustments on the fly, whether it be matching Zoo with Boban when Boban came into the game, or was it Kawhi switching on to Luka? PG obviously had the anxiety issues, and he came out about that and then was dominant once he overcame that over the last couple of games. So it could have gone to 7. I still think the Clippers would have won, but Dallas is good, man. No doubt about it.
I think the Mavericks do have a successful future. I think they're only a signing or 2 away from really being that contender to go deep to the playoffs. But Clippers now going to that second round. Now they have all of their weapons. They do have Beverly back. This guy is a deadly weapon for the Clippers. This is a very underrated player for the Clippers, if you ask me. This is the guy that, as I described him, he does the nitty-gritty. He does the dirty work for the Clippers. He's down to get his hands dirty, swipe the ball away for the biggest stars that are on the court, and he gets it done defensively and offensively. So now that the Clippers are taking on against the Denver Nuggets, what are your thoughts on this matchup?
I don't love that Denver has a ton of momentum going in as someone that's a Clippers fan, but that's definitely something that is going to be a storyline, is that Utah had a 3-1 series lead. Denver went on to win the next 3. So momentum is clearly on the side of Denver. When you look at the two teams and how they're going into this series, the Clippers kind of hobbled in. I mean, they beat a Dallas team that was hobbled. And so nothing really inspired you about the Clippers' play during that series, although they did have their moments, no doubt about that, but they didn't destroy Dallas, whereas Denver got those 3 big wins. The series will be one that really depends on how Denver can stop the Clippers' offense, because Denver's defense is not very good. Denver does not go deep into their bench. So this is going to be a series that's going to test them to see how tired they are. I mean, you even saw Jamal Murray. He was interviewed by Scott Van Pelt after they won the series, and he said, you're going to be playing on Thursday. And Murray's like, wait, what? He thought they were going to have at least another day. It's a Friday. So they're playing every other day while the Clippers are going to be more rested. That will be important as well. But with Kawhi and PG playing as well as they are, Zoo has been incredible defensively. Like you said, Beverly is great defensively, but people don't realize how good of a three-point shooter he is. He can hit about 37 to 40% of his threes, and he hits some good late ones too. It's a balanced team. Marcus Morris, we don't need to talk about what happened with that series against Dallas. Apparently, he's supposed to leave the bubble at some point when he has a kid. We don't know when that's going to be. If it happens during this series, it's going to be important. But going into this series, man, it's really going to be about, can Denver stop the Clippers offense? Because the Clippers offense has been tremendous against Denver all year, and I don't know if Denver can stop them.
Absolutely. And then there's that question of, there's in sports, the team that plays a steady amount of games, not really any rest days or anything, or just really just consistent play. And then there's that argument saying that, well, the Clippers can be cold because they haven't played a couple of days. But what are your thoughts on that? I know you talked about it, that the Nuggets are not going to be well rested, but you know how it goes in sports. The team that is playing the most, usually like the wild card teams, or you know how the divisional teams usually win and they're just resting to wait to see their opponents. Do you think that's going to have a factor at all? Just the fact that the Nuggets have been playing more consistently and the Clippers are a little bit more rested and relaxed?
I don't think so, just because it's not like the Clippers have been off for an entire week. I mean, they last played on Sunday. So it's not like they had a ton of rest. They ended up going one less game than Denver did. So instead of having that Tuesday game, they finished on Sunday. So you got a couple of days of rest, and that actually does help the Clippers in terms of getting Beverly back. So he's not, by the way, for sure going to play game one. I'd be pretty surprised, though, if he doesn't. That being said, he's only going to play about 15 to 20 minutes because he's a guy that has not played more than 20 minutes since March. And so because of that, he's not someone that's going to play starters minutes right away, but he will have an impact. And when you have a guy like Beverly that's aggressive as he is defensively, he racks up fouls. He's not going to have to worry about that because he's only going to play 15 to 20 minutes anyway. So if he gets his fouls, it doesn't matter. He's got 6 to play with. So the one thing also to watch with Denver, though, is this kind of is a Michael Porter Jr. revenge series, because if you remember, the Clippers had a chance to get MPJ with the 13th pick, and they passed on him because of his back issues. He sat out last year because of those issues, and he's looked really good this year. However, he has not been good defensively. So we'll see how much of an impact he plays in the series, because he's someone that can go off in a series, but also can be exploited on the defensive end.
That'll be a pretty interesting storyline to watch, if you ask me. That's a little bit of a behind the series one. Usually when players like to get their revenge on their former team or a team that could have picked them up, it's always nice to see them ignite that fire and see what's going to happen. But now, what do you think are the keys for the Clippers to go to the next round, to be able to go to that Western Conference final?
Communicate defensively. Really, the issue with the Clippers during this series has been their defense. They've had a really difficult time when Montrezl Harrell has been on the floor with Reggie Jackson and Lou Williams. That trio has been roasted throughout the entire playoffs against Dallas. I mean, whenever those three were on the floor, the Clippers were getting destroyed. And even when you had Kawhi and PG on the floor with them. So Doc needs to figure out his rotations, because it's going to be really important to figure out what to do defensively to ensure that when you play your bench unit, you're not getting crushed. And the one benefit is, like I mentioned earlier, Denver doesn't have much of a bench. And so because of that, there's not as much of a problem as you would have facing against Seth Curry and Trey Burke and Boban. Dallas provided a lot more off the bench than Denver did. So we'll see. We'll see what happens, but I think the defense is going to be the most important because the offense is there, man. The offense is always going to be there for a team with Kawhi, with PG, with Marcus Morris, with Patrick Beverly, Lou Williams, Montrezl Harrell, Zoo. I mean, they have so many guys they can go to on the offensive end. It's going to be the defense. And can Zoo hang with Jokic? How are the Clippers going to play it when a guard sets a screen to free up Jokic? Will Zoo go and fight across the screen? Will a guard be put on Jokic? And how will that guard do? Because Reggie Jackson has struggled defensively, but he's been excellent offensively and has been a sniper from deep. He's shooting about 50% from three so far in the playoffs. So it's going to be the defense.
Defense definitely wins you ball games. And I really do like all of those players you just named because that names a whole entire Clippers roster right there. Everybody is capable of being a scorer. And just the thought of having two of the best closers in the game in Lou Williams and in Kawhi Leonard, I'm scared if I'm the Nuggets, I'm really afraid to go into that fourth quarter and try to put a stop to the Clippers because that is a pretty scary dynamic duo. Just we've seen what they both can do. They are really capable of putting the team on their back and just stacking up 20-point fourth quarters. Is definitely capable for this Clippers team.
Yeah, no doubt. And Dallas, Dallas did the same though. I mean, you look at what Dallas does offensively with KP and with Luka, they can light it up. And that's one thing that actually helps the Clippers is they've just faced a team that has a point guard that can go off and a center that can shoot the three, where Denver does the same thing. I mean, they have Jamal Murray who went off for 42, 50, and 50 or something like that in 3 straight games. And then you have Jokic, who can do whatever he does, and he's a tremendous passer as well. So it's going to be up to the Clippers to figure out a way to slow those two down. But that being said, I don't think Denver has anybody to stop Kawhi. And until a team has somebody to stop Kawhi, where, for example, next round, LeBron is a guy that has been really good defensively and when he wants to. And he's a guy that can slow down Kawhi a little bit. So in this series, I just don't think that Denver has the wings to slow down the Clippers PG Kawhi combo. And because of that, I think Denver's going to have a hard time.
So final question before we go to the break, Brandon. What is one thing that you want to see the Clippers improve on? I know you're talking about that defense communication and such. Is there a specific stat or is there a specific thing that you want to see the Clippers improve on from something they made mistakes in the first round now to this second one?
Yeah, it's going to be the plus minus of that trio that I brought up with Harrell and then with Reggie Jackson and Lou Williams. It's going to be that trio. Can Doc figure it out? Because they've been hurt so badly. You look at what the Clippers did in that final game against Dallas. I think they won that game by 14. Zoo was a plus 33 in that game.
Wow.
Okay, so that means that when Zoo was off the floor, the Clippers were outscored by 19 points. That's how important he was. And Doc has not played him more than 30 minutes until that final game he played 33. So the question is, will Doc continue to ride Zoo and play him the 25 to 35 minutes that he needs to play? Or will he continue to trot out Harrell, who has been okay offensively? Let's not forget that Harrell was not with the team during the bubble, during the regular season part of the bubble, and joined them late. So he's getting a late start. So it's okay that he's rusty. It's understandable. But the Clippers need to recognize that and figure out other ways to score, whether that means not playing Harrell very much. I think he only played 14 minutes in that game against Dallas that closed it out, and playing a guy like JaMychal Green more. They got to figure out what to do with those guards and with Montrezl Harrell. Something has to be done.
I definitely think Doc Rivers is I think he has the experience, and I don't think this is something he hasn't done before with all the coaching experience he has. That's exactly why the Clippers brought him in, for his expertise. I think Rivers will be okay as far as the coaching and such for the Clippers. It's going to be interesting to see. Clippers playing against the Nuggets tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern time. Make sure to tune in to that one for game 1 of the series. But we're going to go in and step aside and take a quick break. When we come back, we'll recap the Lakers and that first round matchup that they had against the Trailblazers. Then we'll start talking about their next opponent in the Houston Rockets and what a game it was last night against the Thunder, Brandon. But we'll get We'll talk all about it in the second half, where if you're not on the sideline, it's not Sideline Sports Podcast, the source of all SoCal sports. We'll be back.
This is Kyra Boncho Smith, hip-hop artist and men's basketball player, and you're watching Sideline Sports Podcast.
Welcome back to Sideline Sports Podcast. Again, I'm the host, Alex Naveca, and with me today is the host of the HoopBall Clippers podcast, Brandon Marcus. And the first half, we were talking about the first round for the Clippers playing against the Dallas Mavericks, and then talking about the preview and a prediction of how the Clippers are going to do against the Nuggets. So now with the other LA team, with the Lakers. The Lakers, first round playing against the Portland Trail Blazers. Lakers losing game one, then going with 4 straight wins to come from behind the series and end up taking it. And same scenario, they ended up getting a lot of rest before waiting for their next opponent, which was that game last night for the Rockets and for the Thunder. I don't know if you got a chance to catch that one, Brandon. That one was a super fun game right there, and it just went down to the final second, literally.
Yeah, it was nuts, man. It was crazy just to see that final play where you had a chance to get the ball to Gallo or to CP3. Instead, they somehow inbound it to Steven Adams and just turn it over. And then obviously you had that free throw before that they missed. So a shot would have obviously won it for OKC. And dude, CP3 was great the game before, and he was great yesterday too. They just didn't have enough. And it's Houston, man. Harden, he said after the game that he played awful, and he has had a hard time in these games that have been important to his quote-unquote legacy. But this series will really define who Houston is, because if Houston would have lost that last game yesterday, I think you would have seen Mike D'Antoni leave. You would have seen Daryl Morey end up getting fired from Houston. And now you have a chance to possibly upset the Lakers, because the one thing the Lakers don't want to see is a team like Houston that doesn't play conventional at all. They're going to go and put up three-pointer after three-pointer after three-pointer. They don't have a center, and they're okay giving up rebounds. But those three-pointers can be deadly against a team that doesn't have great perimeter defense in the Lakers.
See, and that's one thing too. If you let a team get hot behind the arc, then that's their weapon. And especially when you have that duo of Harden and Westbrook, that's going to be a super tough task. I mean, Harden is already Harden. He's already hard to defend. He's already a guy that is really tough to figure out what he's going to do. He just does everything well. You look at Westbrook as well, another great player too. I see him more as a guy that sets guys up with assists and stuff. He doesn't exactly have the three-point shot like Harden does as well as him, but I do see Westbrook having that 1-2 punch with Harden. You can see Westbrook trying to drive it in, and then easily all the attention goes to Westbrook. He dishes it out to Harden. Harden is open for the three, splash. I see a lot of plays like that happening, and that's going to be something the Lakers are really going to have to figure out. Do you try to figure out how to stop Harden and that three-point shooting team, not just Harden, or do you want to focus on emphasizing in the paint? Because I believe that's where the Lakers live the best. Points in the paint, they really did dominate there against the Trailblazers.
Yeah, Houston's fine going 5 out. I mean, they're happy playing 5 guys in the perimeter, and frankly, they were really at their best during the regular season when Russell Westbrook was driving and he was scoring 30 to 40 points in a game and shooting over 50% because he was getting so many layups and he wasn't settling for jump shots and he wasn't doing too much. And you had guys like Harden that obviously got theirs, but when you spread out, there's nobody in the paint to really stop a guy like Russell Westbrook who's driving. So Houston can play this one a couple different ways, and their shooting will obviously be very important. They're going to need to find a way to get Davis out of the paint, because if Davis is able to stay in the paint and disrupt and able to get his hands in the passing lanes and block shots, they're going to be in trouble. But that being said, I just don't know if the Lakers are going to have enough on the defensive end to slow down Houston because they're so good. But guys like Covington and Daniel House, they're going to have big series. They're really going to have to be important. They're going to have to knock down their threes, because if they're not, then the Lakers are going to make quick work of Houston.
Absolutely. And I think for Houston, they're really going to have to stop AD because this is a guy that can easily get 30, 40 points. And then not to mention what LeBron can do as well. And that's when the Lakers, I believe, really have to depend on the rest of the team and really depend on that bench. And that's, I really think Lakers are going to have a hands full in this one. This is going to be a very interesting series. It's going to be a tough one. But as far as the paint battle, I really do think the Lakers will win that one for sure.
Yeah, no doubt. There's no question about that. And the one thing about Houston is they're happy to lose the rebounding battle by 20 to 25 and still somehow get the win. I mean, that's just something they've done ever since they've gone to this 6-7 or shorter lineup. And with Anthony Davis, there's no excuse for him to have anything less than 20 to 25 shots a game. There's no reason because nobody on Houston can stop him. Absolutely nobody can stop him on Houston. They don't have anybody tall enough. They don't have anybody good enough to slow him down. And so it's going to be up to Anthony Davis to have a huge series and for LeBron to get him the basketball because Houston does have the wings to put on LeBron. They have PJ Tucker. They have Robert Covington. They have some length to put on him. Of course, LeBron's still better, but it's going to be Davis. He's the key to the series for the Lakers. It starts and it ends at Anthony Davis.
Absolutely. And I saw the Lakers sharpening up their three-point shooting. I think that's going to be a key stat that the Lakers are really going to have to improve on. This is where Danny Green, you have to step it up on that three-point shooting. You did not do a thing in that first series. Kuzma had a couple of games, but I kind of saw him falling off the ladder the last game or two. I really think the Lakers do need help on the three-point shooting. And you got to have a three-point shootout against this very talented Houston team. You can't just dominate in the paint, but if you're the Lakers, you have to win behind the arc as well. You have to try to win in as many categories as possible just because of how talented this Rockets team in shooting is concerned. You have to improve on that. That was something the Lakers struggled so badly when they went into the bubble and even going into the playoffs.
Yeah, at the same time, though, you obviously need to have some three-point shooting. There's no question about that. You can't go 3 for 21 from deep. That being said, the worst thing the Lakers can do is get into a three-point shooting contest with Houston because they would lose that every single time. So they do need to rely on getting easy baskets in the paint. They need to run their offense, and you can't go and try and shoot 3 for 3 for 3 for 3 every single time Houston takes a 3, you take a 3. That's just not going to work. You can't get into a three-point shooting contest with them. You have to play your style of basketball. You need to rely on guys like LeBron getting Davis the basketball. You need to rely on getting the ball to a guy like Caldwell Pope. You need to get the ball to whoever is going to step up in that moment. And for the Lakers, it's Kuzma one game. Can it be Danny Green? Can it be Caruso? They have different guys that are not that dependable, but can shine in a given game. And for the Lakers, they got to play their style of basketball. You got to get the easy buckets. You got to get the transition buckets because Russell Westbrook and James Harden are going to turn over the basketball. So you got to get easy baskets. Don't shoot 3 after 3. It's not going to work. Play your style of basketball and defend. Because if you defend the three-point arc against Houston, you'll be fine.
The thing that I did see the Lakers do very well in that first round is once they got that game 1 loss out of the system against the Blazers, it looked bad. It looked really bad that the Lakers lost that game 1. A lot of people were thinking, oh, look, hey, Blazers are going to sweep the Lakers. This is exactly what we predicted. The Lakers are going into the playoffs cold. But I saw that the Lakers got their act together, and I saw that they were playing very good selfless basketball, very good ball movement, setting guys up, pick and rolls, and it looked really, really nice. And I think if you ask me what the keys to that series for the Lakers is, I think they have to play their style of basketball, just like you said. They have to take advantage of the mismatch of having Davis as the big man in the court. Lakers have to play selfless basketball, and we saw that they were very much capable of doing that. And you have to really help these three-point shooters get hot. KCP was getting hot in the right moments when it came down to the three-point shooting. Now we have to engage other three-point shooters in a Danny Green. Kuzma has to have consistent good games, at least averaging at least like 15, 16 points a game. So I think for the Lakers, they have to have a nice balance, not just a LeBron and AD game, and then everyone else is down here type of thing. So they have to find a way for LeBron, not just to be that playmaker, but to be that assist man, set guys up for wide open shots, and whether that's behind the arc or whether they're just mid-range shots.
Yeah, no doubt. And just to give you an idea of what I'm talking about with the three-point shooting, Houston beat the Lakers in the bubble, and it was 113-97. LeBron didn't play that game, but just to give you an idea of what the Lakers did from three, they were 2 for 19 in that game. Houston was 21 of 57. So you cannot get into a three-point shooting contest with them because the Lakers are not a good three-point shooting team, while Houston is. So where you need to really butter your bread is you need to force turnovers, because James Harden had 10 turnovers in that game, and you just need to shoot the basketball well. They shot 45.5% in that game. You need to shoot well against Houston. If you're in that 46 to 48 range, you should be okay, because Houston's going to miss their fair share of threes. Even though they're going to take a bunch and they're going to make a bunch, they're going to miss a bunch as well. So you need to get other guys involved. You need to have a guy like Danny Green get you 10 to 12 points. Caldwell Pope get you 10 to 12 points. It doesn't need to be a 20-point game from these guys, because if you add it up, LeBron and AD are going to get 60 plus. You just need to get those other points from somewhere else. And with LeBron off the floor, with AD off the floor, those will be important minutes for the Lakers. How do they do with those two guys off the floor? They're not going to be off the floor at the same time. I'd be very surprised if that happened in the series. But with AD off the floor, where are they going to get their offense? What's going to happen? Is it just going to be LeBron? That's the question.
That is going to be a big question, which is why when AD's on the floor, this is why guys like JaVale McGee and Dwight Howard, they really are going to have to step it up. They really are. Howard's going to have to come off the bench and collecting the rebounds. He's going to have to be playing the defensive game. If anybody tries to drive it in, it's like Russell Westbrook when he tries to drive it in. So these are also going to be big games for the Lakers bigs. So it's going to be a real interesting series. Both Western Conference series matchups are going to be very fun to watch, see how both the Lakers and the Clippers fare against their new opponents. But, you know, I asked Dan Besbris how he thought the remainder of the tournament was going to go. So I wanted to ask you, who do you see going above these two series? Who do you see going to the Western Conference final?
I think the Clippers beat Denver in 6, just because I think there are those games where you'll have Jokic, you'll have Murray do well. The one thing that's interesting, though, man, is that the spread in tonight's game is Clippers by 9. So clearly Vegas thinks the Clippers are a much better team than Denver. And it'll be interesting to see if the Clippers live up to that, because they've had some hard times actually stepping up in some of these situations. So we'll see what happens. The Lakers, I think, win probably in 5 or 6 as well. I just don't think that Houston can stop Anthony Davis. And I don't think Houston's going to have a ton of games where they shoot great from 3. They can win a couple of games because of it. But I think Harden will probably get defended by LeBron a bunch, and that will put the onus on Westbrook. And we saw in the last series, man, that Westbrook was not good when he had the ball in his hands and he was all over the place. If he's the Russell Westbrook of the regular season that was not in the bubble, Houston can win this series. If they play that style of basketball and you have guys like Covington and Tucker and House hitting their threes and guys like Jeff Green and Austin Rivers contributing, because there's a lot of guys that can score on Houston. Houston can win this series. But just because of LeBron, I think both teams win in 6.
Yeah, that's a pretty good point. I have to give that one to you, Brandon. It's going to be – all eyes are actually going to be on Russell Westbrook, just because of he came into the bubble late. If you remember that, he didn't exactly come into the start of the bubble. Just the fact that he had to deal with that, and now coming in a little late, he has to dust off the rust, and he has to do it quick because he doesn't have very much time. But I do still see the Clippers going and beating the Nuggets at least in 5 games. I do see the Nuggets the Clippers. I do see them doing some pretty quick work on the Nuggets. As far as the Rockets and the Lakers, I do see that game going 6, maybe even 7. And I'm saying 7 if Russell Westbrook gets on his game and he's back to his normal self when he was with the Thunder and him just scoring and racking up points. So I think that series will definitely be one to watch just because to see, okay, how are these teams going to defend each other because of the Rockets with Anthony Davis and the Lakers trying to defend the Rockets in their three-point shootings. And final question, who do you see in the finals and what is your final prediction for that championship?
Oh man, it's the Clippers had the edge over the Lakers in 3 of the 4 matchups in the regular season. So I just think the Clippers have found a way to slow down LeBron James a little bit. He shot the worst against the Clippers of any other team in the NBA during the season. So I'm going to ride with the Clippers. And in the East, man, I think you're really going to see the two teams that are up 2-0 end up winning those series. I don't think the Bucks come back from this one. It's surprising, but Miami's built really well. And so it'll be Miami versus Boston. Don't give up on Toronto, but I just don't think they have that guy end of game situation that they needed in Kawhi. I just don't know who you can go to at the end of the game if you're Toronto. So you'll see Boston and Miami, and who wins in that one? That's tough. You have two really good coaches. I like Spoelstra a lot. I like Stevens a lot. And Jimmy Butler, Jason Tatum. It's going to be a hell of a matchup to watch. I don't know. I think you may see Miami come out of the East. I think
Wow.
it's a possibility. I think they're built really well. They have a lot of guys that can rise up, whether it be a Tyler Hero or a Duncan Robinson or a Jay Crowder. Obviously, Bam is great along with Jimmy Butler. Dragic is awesome too. There's a lot of guys that can step up. Boston has a lot too, but I just think Miami's a little bit deeper.
That's a really solid squad. It's that Eastern Conference is going down to the wire. A bit of a little bit shocking view there to see Toronto and both the Bucks down in the series 2-0. But you know what? I still want to keep my prediction on the Raptors winning it for the Eastern Conference. And when you go down to the NBA Finals, I'm gonna ride with the Lakers and the Raptors. I'm still gonna stick to that, even though the Raptors are down 2-0. Just you never know what could happen. You just never know. I know 2-0 never looks good in the NBA. It never has looked good in the history of the game. But I'm still gonna stick to my prediction. I don't wanna change my prediction at all or anything. I stick to whatever I predict and gonna stick to it. So we'll wait and see. Today is the start of the Western Conference Finals or the Western Conference second round. So we'll wait and see, Brandon. We'll wait and see.
Yeah, should be interesting. I mean, I'm definitely going off my prediction. I initially had the Bucks in the finals, and I'm not going with that anymore. I just think Milwaukee, for some reason, the playoffs, they just stop. They go and just stop. I don't know what it was. Toronto solved them, and I think here Miami has solved them. There's something about Milwaukee where they don't have that extra little bit that they need. And you would think with Middleton and Giannis and Bledsoe, they would have enough, but they don't.
Yeah, just the Bucks look like a complete different team there on that East Coast, but we'll just have to wait and see. But that's all the time we have left here on Sideline Sports Podcast. Thank you everyone so much for tuning into this show. And please give this episode a thumbs up if you like what we're talking about with the NBA. And also make sure to hit the subscribe button down below. We're just around the corner of 200 subscribers at the moment. And of course, thank you so much to the big guest and Brandon Marcus. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you very much for having me. I had a great time talking basketball. It's always fun to talk hoops, and very much looking forward to this next round because anything can happen. In the bubble, we have seen that without home court, anything can happen. So Houston could upset the Lakers. Denver, who knows if they get hot against the Clippers. It's going to be fun to watch.
I'm definitely anticipating the battle for LA with the Lakers and the Clippers going to that Western Conference Finals. And
Thank you.
Definitely love to see that one. And you'll definitely see a lot of people saying Clippers have the advantage, but we'll wait and see, Brandon. How about this? I'll definitely, once this next series is over, ends up being Lakers and Clippers, we definitely have to reach out again and start talking about it and chatting it up and see who ends up going to the finals.
Sounds like a plan, my man.
All right, then. Thank you so much to everybody for tuning in. I'm Alex Naveja, the host of Sideline Sports Podcast, where if you're not on the sideline, it's not Sideline Sports Podcast, the source of all SoCal sports. Thank you, and stay safe, everybody. Have a good one.